Last night, I saw La Llorona. I told my family this during breakfast, and to my surprise, they all believed me. This guy says that his family, all they asked him was like, where did you see her? What street? Where was she at? And then they tell him, you barely saw her. We had already seen her a long time ago. Now, this guy says that where he lives is a small town and that a lot of people had already claimed to have seen La Llorona. They have a river that's by their town and also a bridge nearby, and that is where people claim to have seen her. He explains that a while back there was like homeless people living under the bridge, and apparently they had all seen La Llorona to the point where they all moved away. Now personally, he had never seen La Llorona, and honestly he just thought it was like an urban legend that people had made up, or people maybe saw a lady that they thought was La Llorona. Now he does say that from time to time you do hear this lady like screaming, and he noticed how his neighbors and people who live in that town rush to go to a street that is illuminated because they claim that you are not safe if you're in like the area where there's no lights. He does say that the bridge that he mentioned does have a light, but from time to time that light always like glitches or comes on and off, so it's not secure. Now he says that he wants to tell you the story of what he saw, because before that point he didn't necessarily believe the people in that town. Like he just thought, well, I didn't see it, so it cannot be real. Now he also says that he does not give a fuck if y'all believe him or not. He's just wanting to tell his story of what he saw with his own eyes and what happened to him. So that night he had just finished seeing his girlfriend, and he got on the city bus that dropped him off at the entrance of his town. He knew that he wanted to rush home because besides the apparitions that people claim to have seen, that area was really dangerous. There are people that would rob you, so he really wanted to quickly get home. His sister had recently gotten robbed at the entrance of that town, so he knew he wanted to get home. And as he's walking on the bridge, he says that he sees a whole bunch of guys coming his direction. He explains that the guys looked older than him, and he had just gotten a new phone, so he didn't want to risk it and pass by them and get robbed. Without these guys seeing him, he ends up going up the mountain that is leading still to his town, but he wanted to walk through the mountain in between the trees so that they wouldn't see him. He said he would rather deal with whatever animal was in that mountain versus the guys that were gonna rob him. He knew that mountain very well, so he knew that he was still gonna make it home, but as he went up there, he was still looking at the guys that were walking just to make sure that they weren't gonna go up the mountain to get him. And when he looked down there, he says that one of the guys actually looked up to where he was. Because of that, he said that he went up the mountain a little more, because so far he was just like walking on the side, so he decided to go more up the mountain because he didn't want the guys to go follow him. But when he looked back, he said that the guy who had seen him made like a signal to the other guys that somebody was up the mountain. That's when all the guys turned to look and see where he was, and he threw himself on a bush hoping that they didn't see him. He looked again because he started to hear running sounds, but when he looked, he realized that all of the guys were actually running into the town and they were running away from him. That is when he sees it. He says that he was looking to see why they were running, and there was a lady in white walking right, you know where he was walking to begin with before he went up the mountain? That's where this lady was walking. She was walking really slowly, like there was no rush, and that is when he realized that when the guy was pointing on the mountain, he wasn't pointing at him. He was probably pointing at the lady that was walking just where he was seconds ago. He said that he stayed very still, he stayed very quiet, but he could feel his heart beating, and he's like, I feel like this lady was gonna hear the beating of my heart. He felt that she was gonna see him and that she was gonna go after him as well. After a few minutes, he couldn't see her anymore, and he just decided to start running down the hill so that he can get to the street that leads up to where his house is, where the guys were running at. He said that when he was like running down the mountain, he fell. He had scraped his knees, his elbows, but he finally made it to the road. When he got to the road, he felt a little bit more relaxed, you know, a little less scared, and he started to think to himself, maybe it was just a woman that was like walking home. Why are we all so scared? It was just a normal lady. Maybe she was a homeless lady. Like, we don't know who she is. Unfortunately, that is also when he heard the sound, and it was this lady screaming in agony, and he could swear that that sound just like took over the entire mountains and the town. That's also when he noticed that there was a lady and her young son that probably were dropped off at the entrance as well, and he could see them running, like about to pass by him too, but they were very, very scared. By that point, he explains how he had just been standing there like in shock of that sound, and that lady had gotten to where he was at that point, and she literally grabbed him by the hand and told him, you need to run, that's La Llorona, we need to get out of here. He didn't even hesitate. He listened to that lady, and they all ran until they got to the street where the light post was. When he got there, he noticed those guys, the ones that had ran away, the ones where he thought were gonna rob him, they were all hiding in between the parked cars in that street. He said that everybody had hidden. All of them had their like eyes wide open, just staring at the mountain where he had just been at. He said that after a few minutes, they stopped listening to, you know, that scream, but they all didn't have the courage to move. They were all just there very still and still hiding. He said that all of them felt a little safer being that they were all together, and that for like the next couple of minutes, they all started talking, and they all realized that neither of them had ever experienced La Llorona. They all lived in that town, and that they never had an experience seeing her, and that it was so weird that it was all of their first time experiencing this. They also thought that it was weird that this experience would happen to a lot of people at once. At the very least, he didn't feel like he was crazy or that he wasn't alone experiencing this, but he also never imagined that he would experience La Llorona like in real time in front of him, seeing her in that fucking mountain. Now, after a while, they all felt safe enough to go home, and he says that when he walks into his house, everybody in his family were in their bedrooms falling asleep. I would have woken their ass up. I'm not getting sleep tonight, and neither is anybody in this house. He ends up going to the kitchen, getting dinner, and he's literally sitting there in the kitchen eating and hoping that somebody comes out of the bedroom so that he could tell them what the fuck happened to him. Unfortunately, nobody came out of the bedroom. He said that no one came out, and he just ended up going to his bedroom to go to sleep. And obviously, it wasn't until the following morning where he could finally tell his family that
the person that sent me the story called it Selfish Beauty. I'm very interested by this title. I don't know what this could be. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi. I'm very new to this, but I thought that I would share. I'm a witch, and not a bad one. I just practice spells, and I use plants for said spells. All my spells are harmless and for other people. I made a vow not to use spells on myself because my great-grandmother told me that if you cast a spell on yourself, it could go wrong. I did not know that. I'm also getting into witchcraft right now, so that's a good thing to potentially look into knowing if that's true or not. You might get what you asked for, but you could lose something, or worse, gain something you really don't want. But one time, I was feeling bad about myself, and I decided to do a beauty spell on myself. This spell is meant to make you look better, but in most cases, it just makes the target realize their own beauty. And it's always people who are already pretty who want this spell. But anyways, I did the spell for the next couple of days. I felt beautiful. I got compliments from random people, and I felt like nothing went wrong. But late one night, I was taking my dog out because he woke me up in the middle of the night whining. So I take him out with his leash on, which is completely normal for us. Strange that it's late, but I always keep him on a leash at night. This night I was half awake, and I felt this strange pressure when I got to my backyard. And my dog felt it too. He refused to go back there even though that's where he always goes to poop. So I listened. I took him to the front, and he went to the bathroom, and we went inside. Before I went to my room, I went to the kitchen for some water. From the corner of my eye, I saw this figure staring at me through my window. When I turned to it fully, it whispered, "You're so beautiful." Is that scary or nice? So we're being complimented. But like, was it, you're so beautiful, like, oh man, you're so beautiful because I've noticed how beautiful you are because you're definitely beautiful? Or is it like, you're so beautiful, like a fucking weirdo? I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed in my room, and when the sun rose the next morning, I had my dad go outside with me. When we got out there, there were scratch marks at the window. Our window is 6 feet off the ground. I, as a 5'9" woman, have to stand on my tiptoes to see through it. And we have an old washer and dryer outside too, with a bit of space between the windows and the appliances. It's too tight for me to fit in there without moving the washer. But the figure didn't look like it was on the washer. I could clearly see it standing straight. It was black and had human features, but weirdly saggy. Its eyes were too wide, and it looked like its skin was failing to stay in place. Oh, that sounds gross, like it was melty. It wasn't wrinkly, but the skin hung in patches. Ew. After that incident, I stopped casting the spell on myself and even asked the people who had asked me to cast the spell if they've seen any figures around them or any paranormal activities, but they all said no. I don't sell my spells, I only do them for my friends, and even then I hardly do anything other than protection spells, which my great-grandmother said was the only spell that should be used on yourself. Anyways, after I stopped doing the beauty spell on myself, I didn't see it again, but I do have other paranormal stories, so if you'd like to hear more, please let me know. We always want to hear more. Okay, so like, what the fuck was that? Like, what the fuck even was that? With its weird, like, pieces of skin hanging. I'm picturing this in my head, and I don't know if this is accurate, but I'm literally picturing the skin, like, looks like it's, like, melting off of the face. Do we think that it had anything to do with the spell? Or do we think that it was, like, some weird, grotesque entity, or maybe, like, a spirit of a person who died in a, like, got their face melted off weird, gross kind of way, and they were, like, jealous? Or they just wanted to be like, hey, you're so beautiful. I have no idea, but that's like really freaking spooky. And there's claw marks at the window. Does that mean that it was trying to get in? But if it was trying to get in, wait, if it was a paranormal entity, it doesn't need to get in. It doesn't need to like scratch to get in, right? It could just like poof in, or maybe you have to invite it in, but it's still like, would it be scratching? If it was a paranormal, maybe it was like an interdimensional being then? Oh my God, I don't know. What do you guys think?
One of my favorite urban legends is the legend of Mel's Hole. And it started in 1997 when a man named Mel Waters called into Art Bell's popular radio show, Coast to Coast AM. And he said that there was a 9-foot, 9-inch hole on his property that looked like a well, but it defied all laws of nature. It never filled up. Radios picked up strange frequencies anytime they were near it. Animals wouldn't go near it. And for years, even before Mel and his wife lived on the property, the neighborhood had used it as a sort of a local dump. For generations, locals had used it as a place to get rid of their unwanted belongings, like old appliances or tires. But one of the strangest claims came from a neighbor who said that he dumped his recently passed hunting dog down the hole to its final resting place, and just a few days later saw the same dog still wearing its worn leather collar running through the forest. But the dog wouldn't come when it was called, and it behaved strangely as if it were no longer his dog. The hole, which is located about 9 miles west of Ellensburg, Washington, looked normal enough. It was just a hole in the ground with a stone-lined rim, and when Mel and his wife first moved in, they assumed that it had been a well at one point. But after throwing a number of their own things down the hole and realizing that they couldn't hear water at the bottom, or the things that they threw hit any bottom at all, they decided to see how deep this hole really was. And so Mel, being an avid fisherman, decided he was going to drop a 1-pound lead weight to a 5,000-foot fishing line and lower it down. After 5,000 feet, there was still no bottom, and so he attached another 10,000-foot line to the first line and continued, but still no bottom. He kept going until he had spooled over 80,000 feet, which is roughly 15 miles of fishing line, and there was no resistance that indicated a floor. While experimenting, Mel said that his own dogs wouldn't go near the hole, even when forced. He would try to drag them closer, and they would dig their feet into the ground and cower and whine. He also noticed an absence of insects both in and around the hole, and even birds overhead refused to fly above it. And then there was the phenomenon that Mel called the black beam or the anti-light, and both he and a neighbor claimed that one night they witnessed a black beam of light shoot up from the hole and disappear into the clouds. And according to them, the beam of light was so dark it seemed to absorb all of the light around it. It wasn't reflective like normal light, it was the absolute absence of light. It was visible even against the darkness around the hole. And other claims included that objects that were lowered in and retrieved were changed somehow, either in temperature or form. And all of these claims sort of indicated that the hole, or whatever was in the hole, was warping the reality around it somehow. And Mel even said that he had lowered a camera or a probe at one point down the hole, but that the technology had failed and that the footage showed nothing comprehensible. And of course, Art Bell and his listeners were hooked. Millions of listeners were hooked onto every word and wanted all the details. And there were a number of calls between the initial call in 1997 and 2002. But then Mel says the government showed up, and he arrived at his property one day to see the area sealed off. And when he asked why, the government personnel told him that there had been a plane crash. They allegedly offered him millions of dollars to stay quiet and stay away, and he took the deal because he said he feared for his life, and so he eventually moved to Australia. But then the story gets even stranger, because in some of Mel's final calls to Coast AM, he hinted at a second hole in Nevada, which he had found out was allegedly behaving the same way that the hole on his property behaved, suggesting that the phenomenon was not isolated. According to Mel, he had been contacted by representatives of a Native American tribe in Nevada, and they claimed that they had heard his story and wanted him to come out to look at a similar hole that was on public land that was managed by the Bureau of Land Management, that they said had been there for at least 100 years and behaved in the exact same way. When Mel arrived in Nevada, he learned that the local Basque community had known about this hole for generations, and the local Basque community had settled there in the mid-1800s, and that shepherds had used the area for herding. They considered the site sacred or holy ground and had known about it for even longer than he initially thought, for at least 200 years. The hole was roughly the same size as the Washington hole, about 9 feet in diameter, and while he was there, they decided to carry out an experiment that was absolutely one of the wildest and most disturbing escalations in the whole story. According to Mel, they placed a live sheep in a crate and lowered it down the hole. And he said that the sheep resisted going into the crate. It bucked, it kicked, it tried to escape, and they lowered it down between 1,000 and 1,500 feet. At that point, the sheep went silent and stopped moving, and suddenly everyone that was around the hole started feeling a vibrating sensation coming up from the ground. They left it down there for about 30 minutes before eventually bringing it back up, and when they brought it back up, the sheep was dead, but it appeared to have been roasted from the inside out. The outside appeared normal. Upon dissection, they noticed that the sheep's internal organs had been taken over by this large tumor-like mass, and inside that mass was a creature. They described it almost as a strange fetal seal, but with human-like eyes, with intelligence behind them. And Mel claimed that this creature was some sort of aquatic human hybrid, or maybe some type of interdimensional entity. Mel claimed the creature showed intent by staring at them and then moved toward the edge of the hole as if wanting to return. And the men he was with said that they thought it would be best if they helped it return, and so they did. And they also bundled up the sheep and the tumor-like mass and threw those down the hole as well. Many listeners convinced themselves that at this point, the hole went from being like a strange urban legend to an obvious tall tale. But later, some Basque shepherds working that area of land said that they saw this entity again and that it had a benevolent type energy. In Mel's final call to Coast AM, he said that he wished he had never called Art Bell to begin with. He said that it had caused nothing but chaos in his life and that everything had been upended. He said the attention had caused him nothing but trouble. But even after he stopped calling, obviously people still wanted to know what was going on. And so there were expeditions to the area, but no one ever found anything other than abandoned mine shafts and sinkholes. Nothing that matched that description, though. And state geologists called this impossible. They said there's no way there was a hole that went 15 miles down in the ground. It would collapse between pressure and heat long before that point. They said it simply could not exist as described. And many people believe that this was a story or a hoax inspired by a local mine shaft that had been turned into the local dump and then was exaggerated on this radio show. But even today, people still search the area. So, do you think Mel's Hole was one of the greatest American hoaxes or one of the greatest American cover-ups? Drop your theories, and if you enjoyed this video, I think I'm going to do a longer compilation style of my favorite urban legends, so if you have one you think I should cover in that compilation, let me know.
Let's read a scary story about a crawl space. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet, so grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. My Nana lived alone in a farmhouse deep in rural Maine. No neighbors for miles, just woods, a dirt road, and an old house that seemed to groan even without wind. It was her homestead, her happy place. I stayed there for a week every summer. The first night I woke up around 2:30 a.m. because I heard someone walking downstairs. Not unusual, I thought. Maybe Nana couldn't sleep. The footsteps continued for almost an hour. Slow, steady, back and forth across the kitchen floor. The next morning I mentioned it. Nana stopped buttering her biscuit and looked at me strangely. "Sweetheart," she said, "I take sleeping pills. I was asleep all night." I laughed it off. Then she asked me something that made my stomach drop. "Did it sound like shoes?" I nodded. Apparently my papa used to pace the kitchen every night before bed. There was never a reason, it was just a habit. He passed 4 years earlier. I figured my Nana was just an old woman connecting unrelated things. Then the third night happened. I woke up to scratching. Not downstairs, inside my bedroom wall. It sounded like fingernails dragging slowly through the wood. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I turned on my phone flashlight and listened. Then 3 knocks came from inside the wall. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I checked outside. There was no tree branch touching the house, no animals, nothing. That afternoon, while helping Nana clean the basement, I noticed a small wood door tucked behind shelves. A crawl space, maybe 3 feet tall, with a hanging padlock that was rusted shut. "What's in there?" I asked. My Nana looked genuinely disturbed. "Nothing," she replied. "Then why is it locked?" She didn't answer. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around midnight I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and went downstairs. The basement air smelled like mildew and dirt. I found the crawlspace door. Nana had tried to push the shelves back in front of it, but I easily pushed it out of the way and finally got a good look at it. The padlock was ancient, but something was wrong. The lock was hanging open. I could have sworn it was rusted shut earlier. I remember because I had tried tugging on it. Now the door sat slightly ajar. A black cap stared back at me. I should have crawled into bed, put on an Adventure Time, and went to sleep. Instead, I opened it. The smell that seeped out was horrific. Rot, wet earth, and something sour. I shined my phone flashlight inside. The crawl space stretched beneath the house. Dirt floor, stone supports, darkness. At first, I didn't see anything. Then my flashlight landed on something in the corner. A chair, just a wooden chair, facing the wall. I remember feeling irrationally frightened. It was like someone had left it there intentionally. I turned my head to the left. I heard a movement, a soft scrape. Somewhere deeper in the darkness, and I froze. My hands trembled slightly. "Hello?" I called out. I wasn't sure why I did, because either way I would be scared, but if I heard a reply, I'd be terrified. The movement stopped. Silence. Then something answered, not a voice, a breath. Long, slow, right beside my ear. I swung my flashlight, but nothing. The crawl space was empty. I slammed the door shut and ran upstairs as if my life depended on my speed. I couldn't tell you how fast I made it up to my bed under the covers and immediately began watching Adventure Time to distract me. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I told Nana everything. She stared at me for a long time. Then, she finally told me why the crawl space was locked. Years before I was born, she used to hear someone moving beneath the house every night. Scratching, crawling, breathing. My papa assumed it was an animal. One night he went down there with his shotgun. He came back 10 minutes later, white as a sheet. According to Nana, he immediately nailed the crawl space shut and locked it with a heavy-duty padlock. When she asked what he'd seen, he refused to answer. For the rest of his life, he would only ever tell her that it wasn't an animal. A few months later, he suffered a heart attack. He never explained further. I was running on only a 2-hour nap that I took in the middle of the day while my Nana sat on the couch sewing a kitchen towel for her friend. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the chair, about the breathing, about what Papa had seen. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps again, walking across the kitchen. Slow, steady, back and forth. I pulled my blanket over my head and turned up the volume of my TV show on my phone. Then the footsteps stopped. I listened. Nothing. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, on my bedroom door. I whispered, "Nana?" No response. Then I heard something that I will never forget. Never. A voice. Very soft, very old, coming from the hallway. "Emma." My blood turned to ice. Nana was the only person in the house. She never called me Emma, always sweetheart or baby. I didn't move. The voice came again, closer. "Emma." Then, from downstairs, I heard my Nana scream. I threw my blankets off my bed and ran out of the room. Down the stairs, I found her in the kitchen, standing at the basement door, shaking, crying, and pointing. The basement door was open, the light was on, and muddy footprints led from the basement stairs into the kitchen. Not a shoe print, not animal tracks, handprints, hundreds of them, littering the tile. Someone had crawled out of the crawl space using only its arms. We left the house before sunrise. My Nana moved into assisted living the next year, unable to maintain her homestead. The farmhouse sat abandoned for nearly a decade. Then a contractor bought it. According to local rumors, he quit the renovation after 3 days. He told people he kept hearing someone moving beneath the floors at night. Last year, curiosity got the best of me. I looked up the property online. Up for sale, the listing photos were mostly normal. Kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, basement. Then I saw a photo of the crawl space. The chair was still there, facing the wall, but that wasn't the thing that made me close my laptop. Someone had zoomed in and accidentally captured the corner beyond the chair. There was a person crouching there, naked, pale, thin enough to see every rib, looking into the camera. The photo was taken in daylight. The realtor later removed that image, but I downloaded it first. I've shown it to a dozen people, telling them what was happening in that house. Every single person notices the same thing eventually. The thing in the corner isn't looking at the camera. It's looking past it, like it's watching whoever is viewing the photo. And every time I open the image, I notice something I swear was not there before. The last time I checked, there were muddy handprints on the wall behind the chair. 3 of them, fresh, wet, as if someone had just climbed out. That story gave me chills several times while I was reading it. Let me know what you thought, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
Are there roaches the size of footballs in New York City? Now, there are many people who have claimed to have seen these ginormous roaches in the slums of New York City. And what's creepy about roaches is that they bite people. And also they make this creepy, very eerie hissing sound. But the craziest thing about roaches is they can eat anything, including humans. Now, there was this man named Joe. Joe was from New York City. And in the 80s, he managed this apartment complex in Queens. Now, he said he met this landlord who wasn't a great guy. And he said he offered him a room at this apartment complex as long as he would manage it and take care of the maintenance. So Joe, being short on cash, jumped at the offer. Well, he said his day-to-day tasks were, fixing things around the apartment complex, collecting rent, and sometimes taking out the trash. When he first moves in, he said the weird thing he noticed is every night he would hear this weird sound in the walls. He said it sounded like something was moving in there. At the time, he thought maybe it was just the plumbing or possibly the radiant heat. And he chalked it off to just that. We said down in the basement, there was a tenant named Mr. Williams. He had lived there for a very long time. He was quiet. He didn't talk to anybody. He said you rarely seen him. So one day there was a knock at his door. And he was surprised when he opened it to see Mr. Williams. And Mr. Williams says to him, "Hey, I am having a roach problem in my apartment." And he said, it's not that there's a bunch of roaches. He said there are some very large roaches, almost the size of footballs. Can you come spray or something? So he said, okay, I'll come tomorrow and I'll take a look. So Joe goes down to the basement and goes to this guy's apartment. When he opens Mr. Williams' front door, he is shocked to see this apartment is completely swarming with cockroaches. He said they were on the walls, they were on the ceilings, they were in almost every crevice and orifice of this apartment. And he said Mr. Williams told him in the back room, in the closet, that's where the large roaches live. So he goes to the back room and he starts to hear this this hissing sound. He opens the door and he said right on the floor there were roaches as big as a football. And they were just sitting up, staring at him and making this hissing sound. So he said he sprayed in there real fast. He closed the door and he left his apartment. And he tried to get in touch with the landlord. And he's like, you need to get a exterminator out here because there's a very bad roach problem. But the landlord, like always, didn't care. So a couple months pass and he gets a phone call one day from the landlord who says, hey, I want you to go down to Mr. Williams and check on him because he hasn't paid rent. So either he's moved or something has happened to him. So Joe goes back down into the basement and he knocks on Mr. Williams' door. Said no one answered. So when he reached for the handle, he was surprised to find the apartment was unlocked. He goes inside and he said the first thing he noticed that there were no more roaches. Like he didn't see a single roach in the living room. He walks on back to the bedroom. And that's when the horror unfolded. Because laying in the bed was Mr. Williams, or what was left of him, his bones. but he was completely covered in cockroaches, and they had eaten him alive. So Joe runs out of this apartment, and, he's vomiting, he's sick, really disturbed from all this. But he didn't move because he had nowhere else to go, and he couldn't afford another apartment. So he stayed there for a while. And he said night after night, he would hear these sounds in the walls. And he couldn't help but think, were these the very large roaches? And that's when he said one night he was asleep. And he woke up to the feeling of these little stings all over his body. And when he opens his eyes, he could see that he was completely covered in roaches. And on his leg was this very large roach that was the size of a football, staring at him. He throws this roach off. He starts batting him off him. He runs out of the apartment, and he left that day, and he never returned. But he was adamant that those roaches ate Mr. Williams.
Hey guys, so today I wanted to tell y'all a scary story that happened to me years ago. So y'all can give me y'all's thoughts, let me know what y'all think. Okay, so basically I was like 14, so it was like 10 years ago. At the time we were living in an apartment complex. And it's kind of like an astral projection type of thing that happened to me. I went to my room that day, I said goodnight to my mom. I fell asleep and then I woke up, and when I woke up, like I just opened my eyes, but I was still kind of like late. I remember like trying to get up, and I couldn't get up, and I was trying to get up, but I had like paralysis, total paralysis. I couldn't get up. But this wasn't sleep paralysis, guys, because when I was finally able to like sit up, it felt like a weird electricity. Like my whole entire body, I could feel like electricity running through my whole body. It was so weird. It was such a crazy feeling. And I sit up, I get up from the bed, and then I look down and I'm dead ass sleeping. I thought I was dreaming. Then I walk out of the room. Anyways, I go into the living room area, and my mom's sitting down watching the news, and like she's sitting in the sofa, like with her legs to the side, and she had the remote in her hand. I'm calling to her, and I'm like, mom, trying to get her attention, and it's like she can't hear me, like I'm invisible. And I open the door and I go outside. That was the only thing different than from real life, I feel like, was the outside. And under the staircase there was a cat, and basically the cat like starts meowing at me. It walks off, following the cat and seeing where the cat is going. So when I followed the cat, it took me to the back part of the apartments, which was like the parking lot. And the parking lot, it was just like this long, straight, empty, like, parking space, really big. It had sheds. And this is where the part where I'm telling y'all that it looked different in real life, because everything else that I was seeing, like when I woke up and everything, it was very similar to how it was as if I was awake. But the parking lot, it was like pitch black. It didn't have any, it was just blackness, and all I could see was the sheds. I saw like this light, and the light was coming from this car, and around the car was like this group of people. And the cat is the one like taking me over there. And I just stood there, and I tried to call at the people and say like, hey, try to talk to them as well. And nobody was like looking my way. And the cat was wanting me to go over there to the car. After all that, like my gut feeling was telling me like, don't go near them people, don't go into the car, don't go investigate nothing. Just went back into my apartment. I walked in, my mom was doing the same thing. I walked into my room, I still saw me sleeping. I laid back on top of myself, and as soon as I lay down, I like woke up. But this time, like, actually woke up. I don't know, I woke up like feeling weird, like, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt different. And I got up, I went into the living room, and my mom was doing the exact same thing that I saw her doing whenever I was sleeping.
And I told her about it. She was like, yes, I've been sitting here and I've been watching the news. Like, what the fuck? So like, what actually happened? Like, did I actually leave my body? Because I called my uncle that day. He was very religious, and then I told him everything that had happened, and he started praying for me. And they told me the people that I saw, that they were like demons that were trying to get me or whatever. So that's like my main question to this day is what would have happened if I went and got close to the car with the people? Like, what would have happened if I followed the cat all the way to the people? I know y'all seen that. That's crazy. But yeah, that's my main question. Would I still be here today? Would have they have taken my soul? I don't know, guys. But y'all let me know what y'all think. And if y'all have scary stories that y'all would like me to tell, send them to me and I would gladly tell them because I love scary stories. But yeah, thank you for watching.
I was invited to go on a hunting trip, but I don't think they were hunting deer. So a guy I was working with, he invited me to one of his family's hunting trips. They said that they go every single October. It's more camping than hunting, if anything, but he said it's really fun. They love doing it every year. I wasn't really into hunting, and he let me know that it was like a beautiful property. There was acres and acres of it. Like I had to go see it, whatever. I said, okay, yeah, I'll join. So when I arrived, it was pretty much what you would expect. It was like campers and coolers and, drinks, whatever. So we were hanging out by the fire, and I didn't hear anything about like deer hunting. I didn't see any deer stands. They weren't talking about bait or licensing or anything like that. Instead, they were asking really weird questions. Like, how long have you known Jake? Does anybody know you're out here? What time did you leave your home? That kind of a thing. I didn't think too much of it until we were eating dinner that night, and the guy, one of the older guys, there's about 5 of them, all older than me, he slid me like a little notepad, and he's like, why don't you write down like your name and number just in case you get lost or whatever. So I did, and I noticed that there were names and numbers like above my name. It was like a list almost, and some of them had check marks right next to them. After we ate, everybody started to get ready to head into the woods. So I grabbed the rifle that my coworker let me borrow. He brought it for me, and one of the older men, he looked at me and he's like, you're not gonna need that. And I was like, what do you mean? Aren't we going hunting? And he said, we are. And then he took the rifle out of my hands and he leaned it up against his white truck. That was the first moment that I felt really, really uncomfortable with the situation. So I let him know, I was like, hey, like, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm just gonna head home. Nobody really tried to convince me to stay. They weren't angry or anything with me. They just said, okay, well, on your way out, like, don't stop for anybody on the road. Weird comment, but I got in my truck and I left, and as I was driving down, I noticed that there was a sheriff's deputy at the end of the trail. He wasn't stopping anybody, he was just sitting there. I thought about stopping and talking to him for a sec, but then I remembered what they said, so I just carried on, and I went home. A few weeks later, my coworker that I went on this hunting trip with, they quit. Nobody really knew why, but life went on. About a year later, I was on my socials, and I came up on a little article, and it said that there's a man that came out of those same woods, and he looked very dehydrated and very disoriented. Sheriff's office, this man said that he had been chased by strangers all night through these woods, but the police had no evidence to support this story. I'm sure most people read that article and just assumed that he was hallucinating or on some kind of drug trip, but it definitely didn't sit well with me, especially when I think back to what the man said before I left. He said to not stop for anybody on the road, and I thought that he was just trying to warn me of like not getting lost or something, but I think he was trying to warn me of something else.
Have you seen this? Let's talk about it because all of you keep sending it to me, and what the hell is going on here? A lot of people think that it's an imp. If you don't know what an imp is, I'm about to explain it. Welcome to half-assed content. I'm going to be doing this on this platform now just because why not? But an imp, let's start with the church over in England, okay? It's called Lincoln Cathedral. Now, Lincoln Cathedral has this statue. It's up on the wall, like up in the corner. I've got pictures up here. It said that originally this thing was alive. The story goes that the Dark One sent 2 imps up to Earth to roam around and wreak havoc, and they decided to go to a church to do that. They're in there breaking sacred stuff, messing with everyone in there, laughing at all of the people that are trying to worship. So an angel comes down and is like, enough, you two knock it off, that's it. They start laughing, running around. One gets away, one doesn't. One ends up setting up on the wall. That's the story. You might be thinking, so what? Who cares? It's just a little statue in a church. But England was like, you know what? Hell yeah. They took that statue and made it the mascot, named their like professional soccer, football, whatever you want to call them, team after that. They dress it up. They put little jerseys and stuff on it when the soccer team's playing. They sell merch like coffee mugs, pins, little door knockers where you knock his little leg. What do you think? Do you think that imps are real? Do you think that it's a little unhinged that they use this as their mascot? Because I do. Be sure you're following so you never miss any half-assery content. You're welcome.
Did you know that Pirates Bay in Tobago was named Pirates Bay because of the influx of pirates that used to hide out in that area? We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Series Story, Trini Folklore for you today, and we are in Pirate Country, aka Tobago. Yes. So you know, in Tobago, we have a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean sort of situations happening, and there is a bay called Pirates Bay named after the mere fact that so many pirates visited Pirates Bay in Charlottesville. So as you would know, the 17th century was the golden era for piracy. They had pirates frequenting up and down the Caribbean Sea, and Pirates Bay was a haven for privateers, buccaneers, and pirates alike. So there were a lot of famous pirates that you may have heard about that would have loved coming to Pirates Bay. One of those is Blackbeard. We all know Captain Blackbeard. Captain Blackbeard was known for his fierce psychological warfare when he was attacking ships. Pirates Bay was one of his favorite spots, as they said that he often frequents Pirates Bay to hide out in order to attack ships that were passing by. Sir Henry Morgan, we all know Sir Henry Morgan. He was a privateer at the time, and he would often go to Pirates Bay because he loved the lush green forest that Charlottesville would have given. It was a radar block, so he was then able to dock his ships in order to repair his ships in Pirate Bay and scrape out barnacles from the hulls and stuff. So he used it as a strategic point where he can stop and repair his ships before he go into battle. And one of the better known ones is Captain Finn, and he's known very much in Tobago's history, and he used Pirates Bay as a strategic point where he can intercept ships. So he raided ships left, right, and center from that strategic vantage point in Pirates Bay, and yeah, he was raiding ships. So all of these very infamous pirates used it for different reasons. Some use it to raid ships, some use it as a vantage point, some use it as a place where they can hide and they can repair their ships. But it was a cove and a haven for pirates, hence the name Pirates Bay. So let me know, did you know that all of these famous pirates visited Tobago's waters in order to either fight, fix ship, or thief? Let me know. Coming on real quick to tell you about my passion project, the Papa Boa Boat Virtual 5K, where you can receive this very beautiful Papa Boa medal. It is one of its kind, it's locally created, it is locally designed, and you also get a Papa Boa booklet, you also get a Papa Boa player card, and you get snacks in your goodie bag. So make sure to sign up today to receive this very beautiful medal. The registration link is in our bio, so just click that, or you can WhatsApp us at 2830003. And remember, the challenge starts on the 1st of July, so you have to sign up now. Sign up now so that you can get this very beautiful medal. Yay! Bye!
People are now canceling their reservations at the Great Wolf Lodge after accusations of child trafficking have surfaced. It all comes after a TikTok user posted a video followed up by this text story about a weird experience they had while visiting the Great Wolf Lodge in Scottsdale. It's a little confusing because there's a lot of people involved, so just try to stay with me. But according to this TikTok user, he and his stepsister were walking back to their room when they saw a little girl walking down the halls and knocking on random hotel room doors. They said she looked to be about 6 years old but was completely alone on the 5th floor. The little girl knocked on a door and a shirtless man answered as he stood in a completely dark room. The little girl nervously asked the man if her friend can come out and play. When the man made eye contact with the stepsister of the person posting this story, his response was, quote, they're sleeping. So the stepsister jumped in and asked if the man knew the little girl, and he said no and closed the door. Now this was already a little bit of a red flag, so the stepsister decided to walk the little girl back to where she said her room was on the 3rd floor to make sure that she made it back safely. When the little girl gets to the room, the stepsister then asks if her parents are in there. She initially says yes, but when the stepsister requests to speak to them, she changes her story and says that they're at the water park looking for her brother. So the man who posted the TikTok and his stepsister tell her to stay inside while they wait for staff to come and help sort out the situation. When they notified staff, they were told that staff would be right up, but 20 minutes came and went and nobody had shown up. And that's when another little girl, identical to the first, came running up to them asking if they had seen her brother. So they ask this little girl if she knows the little girl in the room, and she says yes, that they're twins. So they basically tell the little girl, hey, you shouldn't be running around by yourself. She says that her father had sent her because her sister, the first little girl, said that strangers were following her and he wanted the other twin sister to bring her back. 2 6-year-olds, by the way. Again, red flags are going off, because why would a grown man send another little girl, his daughter, to go find the first little girl after she said that strangers were following her? Staff members identifying themselves as security finally arrived, so the original poster and the stepsister explained the whole situation, and the staff knocks on the door where the first little girl was, but when she didn't answer, they were about to turn around and leave. But the stepsister jumped in once again and suggested that they use the twin sister's wristband to gain access to the room, so they did, but when they went inside, the staff claimed that the room was empty. The male security guard then tries to take the second little girl on the elevator, but the person who originally posted this stepped up and said they were going to need some confirmation that these little girls were okay, or else they would contact police, which they eventually did anyways after receiving no update about the family. So police did come, and instead of speaking to the officer, the 2 security officers walked right past him without even looking his way. As the police officer knocked on the door of the hotel room where the little girl's family supposedly was staying, a woman in a red shirt walked past. So the officer asked her if she knew anything about the situation, and initially she said no, and that she was the only security officer on duty that night. So if that's true, then who were the other 2 security officers who took the little girl? The police officer was eventually able to locate the father of the little girls at a restaurant where he did have both the twin girls and their brother that they were supposedly looking for, but the whole situation felt off to the original poster of this story and to people in their comment section. So now theories are flying around. Was this father sending his daughters to the shirtless man's room intentionally? Is staff enabling a traffic situation, or is there an innocent explanation here? What do you guys think is actually going on?
I wore a pink and white sundress. I was 6. I was at the park and I was wearing a pink and white sundress. My mother was talking to her friends, but the park wasn't that crowded, like there weren't that many people there. And there was a mat with toys on it, and the couple that was by it said it was okay with them for me to play with it. After about 20 minutes, the nice lady asked if I wanted to go to the toy store, and I was so excited. But before I could get in her car, a lady with jeans and a red top grabbed me by my hand and pulled me away. And when she did, I started yelling, and it freaked out the other lady who got in her car and drove away without me. My mom ran over. She was panicked. She had noticed that I disappeared and had been desperately looking for me. And at the time, I didn't even know what was going on. I was just mad at the girl from preventing me to go get more toys. When I found out what the lady was going to do, though, well, I still can't see people in sundresses without shivering. The lady that tried to take me was never caught, but her description matched a woman who kidnapped 28 other kids. They weren't as lucky as I was. My mother tried to find the girl that saved me, but she left before my mom found me. And I often wondered who she was and started incorporating red into my wardrobe. But that brings me to yesterday. You see, I often walk around the same park hoping to find the girl that saved my life. But yesterday, I saw the lady who tried to take me. She was holding a child by their hand, leading her away. Just on impulse, I grabbed the child and pulled her out of the lady's hand, and when the child started screaming, the lady panicked and drove away. Stunned by the familiarity of the situation, I looked at the crying girl. She wore a pink and white sundress.
A lot of people don't realize that rest areas can be haunted too. Now, one of the most haunted rest areas in the United States sits between the border of Idaho and Montana on Interstate 90. It's this beautiful rest area that even has individual private stalls. However, it is very creepy. In fact, in 2021, there were 2 students who went out hiking right next to this rest area, and their bodies were found several weeks later. They had apparently committed suicide. And this place is notorious for strange things happening. Now, one story that I heard from this rest area was there was a truck driver, and he pulls in one night, and he thinks it's odd because he notices like there's no vehicles there at the rest area. He's the only one there. So he gets out of his truck and starts heading towards the building to go use the restroom when he sees a person staring out the window. And the person just turns and then just walks away. So he gets inside the building and he finds one of the private stalls, and he goes in there and closes the door and everything. And as he sits down, right, about 20, 30 seconds later, he hears, the door jiggling, and someone's trying to get in the door. And he's like, "Hey, I'm in here." And it stops. And about, another 20, 30 seconds later, it starts again. Someone's trying to get in there. So he pulls his pants up and runs to the door, opens it, looks, there's absolutely no one there. He goes outside to the rest area. There's no cars there yet. And he looks around the entire parking lot. No one's outside. Well, he sits in his truck and waits until someone else comes. And it happens to be another truck driver. And he sees this truck driver get out of his vehicle. He goes inside. And about a couple minutes later, this truck driver comes running out with a scared look on his face. So he waves this truck driver over to his truck. And he's like, "Hey, did you have something weird happen to you in there?" And the guy's like, I'm leaving. I was in the bathroom and there was a woman standing in the mirror, but she wasn't in the bathroom. So he, gets in his truck. This guy gets in his truck and they get out of there. And that's just one of the many creepy things that happen at this rest area. There's another story about a rest area in Kansas. Now, this guy, he's driving. It starts to get late. He's getting a little tired. And he's on kind of this back rural highway. And he's like, I need to get off the road and get some sleep. So he sees a sign for a rest area. And he pulls in off the interchange and starts driving up to this old-looking rest area from the 50s, 60s kind of look. And he notices all the vehicles that are parked in the parking lot are vehicles from like the 50s and the 60s. And he's like, is there some kind of retro thing going on today or something? So he gets out and he notices there's all these people there, but they're all kind of just wandering around aimlessly, almost like they're, zombies. And they're just kind of, walking really strange. So he goes inside this old building and there's a woman in there and she's turned around. And he goes up to this woman, he taps her on the back. And he says, "Is there like some kind of retro thing going on in town?" She turns around, and that's when he sees that she has no eyes. And he's freaked out at this point. He runs out, gets in his car, and starts driving as fast as he can. And as he's leaving the interchange, his tire gets damaged on the curve. And a couple miles down the road, he ends up having to pull over and call a tow truck. Now, the tow truck comes, and they get him all hooked up to the truck. The tow truck driver's like, "Where did this happen at?" And he goes, "At the rest area a couple miles back." And the truck driver the tow truck driver looks at him and is like, "There is no rest area around here for 80 miles. So I don't know what you're talking about." And so after he gets his vehicle fixed, he drives back to this rest area, except where the rest area should have been, it was just a big open field. And it looked like something had been there before, but it was torn down. And these are some of the creepy stories at rest areas across the United States.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Before I start this story, I want you to imagine your own cozy, homey, completely normal house. One with no strange history, no town rumors, no weird energy or occurrences when you first moved in. Just a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood that felt happy and safe. And then, one day, completely random and out of the blue, you start feeling like something is watching you. not gradually either. It's just one day to the next. This feeling just comes about, and then it never goes away. Every single night, you feel it. And you aren't the only one that notices. So the story goes. A few years ago, my family moved to Frisco, Texas. When we first moved there, we lived in a house that my boyfriend's parents were renting. While we lived there, we got to know the neighbors pretty well, especially the man who lived next door, who was staying in his daughter's house while she and her husband were living in Hawaii. Over the time we were there, we all became friends. Eventually, though, he decided that he wanted to move back to Houston, and his daughter agreed to rent the house to my boyfriend's parents. So we packed everything up and moved in right next door. The new house was gorgeous. It was huge. 5 bedrooms, high ceilings, a loft upstairs with a pool table, and a massive projector screen, more than enough space for all of us. And when we first moved in, it was all perfect. A dream come true, honestly. But, of course, after a few weeks, something started changing. Most notably, every night when I went downstairs, I would feel so strongly that I wasn't alone. It always started in the same place, right at the bottom of the staircase. The second my feet touched that last step, I felt it, and I knew. The air there was just different. Now, I never saw anything, never heard anything, but the feeling was so intense that it was impossible for me to ignore. It felt like eyes were locked onto me from somewhere in the darkness. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was my anxiety, that moving into a new house just took some getting used to. Then I started telling myself maybe I was stressed, maybe I was imagining it, but it happened every night. So often that eventually I developed a routine. I would go downstairs, turn on every single light I could find, and leave them on while I did whatever I needed to do. Then, when it was time to go back upstairs, I would shut the lights off one by one. As I got closer to the stairs, each room disappeared into darkness behind me as I went. By the time I reached the staircase, my heart would already be racing. The moment I turned off the last light, I ran. I would sprint up those stairs because I couldn't let go of the feeling that if I looked back, something would be standing there, watching me. I never told anyone any of this, not my boyfriend, not his parents, no one else who was in that house with me. Not long after we had moved in, I got some devastating news. My little sister had been diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, so really everything else suddenly felt insignificant. I immediately booked a flight back to Arizona to be with her and help my family. While I was there, focused on my sister's treatments and spending as much time with her as possible, I got a call from my boyfriend, and as soon as I answered, I knew something was up. He told me about how he had been sitting in our bed playing video games, and suddenly he felt the mattress move beside him. It wasn't something small and dismissible either. He said it felt like someone had physically sat down next to him, and when he looked over, there was an indentation in the mattress. A depression exactly where he felt the weight. He immediately panicked, jumped up off the bed, and ran for the bedroom door, except the door wouldn't open. He grabbed the handle and twisted and pulled, but the door didn't move. It didn't budge. And at this point, his panic had turned into full-blown terror. He kept yanking on the door, desperately trying to get out. And then suddenly, and all at once, it opened, as if whatever had been holding it shut decided that he had had enough and let him leave. When he finished telling me what had happened, I sat there. For whatever reason, that cemented to me that what had happened to me there wasn't just my imagination. For weeks, I had kept my experiences to myself, but now someone else had experienced something in that house too. So, right then and there, I decided to tell him everything. The feeling at the bottom of the stairs, that sensation of being watched, the fear that followed me every night. After telling him everything, he told his parents. Now, his parents were deeply religious people, so after hearing everything, they decided to contact their pastor. They explained to him what had been happening and asked if he would come to the house and bless it. The pastor agreed, and a few days later he arrived with another man from the church. When they got there, everyone felt a sense of relief. These were the perfect people to deal with the situations like this. They did it all the time, right? Surely they would help and have some explanation. But they didn't expect what happened next. The 2 men walked up to the front door, stopped, stood there silently, just looking over the house. Neither of them moved. Neither of them stepped inside.
After several moments of basically nothing, they turned to my boyfriend's parents and told them that they refused to enter. According to them, whatever was inside that house was evil, and they wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. They turned and left without ever stepping foot across the threshold. I stayed in Arizona to help my sister through her treatments, and not long after, my boyfriend, our son, and his parents moved back to Arizona too. None of them wanted to stay in that house any longer. To this day, none of us know what was there. And maybe it was nothing, but after everything, I'm not so sure.
A follower sent me this story after visiting St. Augustine, Florida, and she swears that she may have spent an evening walking around with something that wasn't entirely human. Now, St. Augustine is the oldest city in our nation's history, right? It is the oldest continuously occupied European established city in the United States. Founded in 1565 by the Spanish, it's older than Jamestown and older than Plymouth, and some of its streets have been walked on for nearly 500 years. And according to this viewer, someone there seemed to remember all of it. Now, side note, if you haven't been to St. Augustine, absolutely beautiful. I've been there like 100 times. Recommend that you go. Anyway, she said she was visiting St. Augustine with a group of friends, and she signed up for one of the city's famous history tours, right? They have them all the time. And before the tour started, they stopped at a small martini bar, and it was near the historic district. And while waiting for drinks, she noticed a woman sitting alone. And she said she looked absolutely beautiful, not in like an unusual or like a glamorous way. She just looked timeless, right? She had dark red hair, pale skin, elegant clothes that seemed to look modern but old-fashioned all at the same time. Now, the woman wasn't drinking. She was simply just watching people, just people watching, whatever. And at one point, the hostess walked over and she made casual conversation with her. And that's when this follower overheard something a little strange. The hostess asked if she was visiting from out of town, and the woman just smiled and she's like, yeah, you could say that. I mean, I haven't been here in a very, very long time. Not uncommon, but the comment seemed normal, of course, at first, but something about the way that she said it really stuck with her. Not like someone who hadn't visited in a few years, more like someone returning after generations. It just had that feel to it. And a little bit later on, she noticed the woman was leaving. And oddly enough, she ended up on the exact same walking tour as this viewer who sent me this story. And the woman, she joined the group by herself, and she stayed near the back, didn't really talk to anybody. And at first, nobody paid much attention to her, right? Until the guide started to talk about the city. And every time that he mentioned, like a historical event or something, the woman quietly would add details that nobody could really know. Not correcting him or being like arrogant in any way, but just adding more validity to what he's saying, right? Little small things that sounded incredibly specific. And when the guide mentioned, a fire that actually destroyed part of the city centuries ago, the woman softly said in the back, yeah, the smoke lingered for days and you can smell it all the way near the bay. And the guy just laughed it off, and, he had asked if she'd, read about that somewhere, and she simply just smiled and, was like, brush it off. Later, he actually mentioned an old building that no longer exists. And before he could even continue, she just casually added in again. She's like, oh yeah, the balconies were painted blue and the owner hated the color and complained about it constantly. And several people in the group just laughed and they were like, oh, okay. But the guide, he started to look a little confused, like, who's giving the tour guide here? Because apparently that detail wasn't on any plaque or any of the touring information at all. And as the night went on, it got stranger. The woman seemed to know things before the guide would even say them. Names, dates, descriptions, not facts that you'd memorize from a book or, but I'm talking about facts from memories. Like, you could just tell when someone's recounting something from their own memory. Like, she had actually been there before. And eventually they reached an area near some of the oldest streets in the city, and the guide pointed toward a stone structure, and he began to explain its history, of course. And before he could finish, the woman again, she just quietly whispered, it used to look a little different and whatever, but Anyway, my follower happened to be standing beside her at this point, and she asked her, like, oh, like, what do you mean? And the woman just stared at the building for a few seconds and said something like, oh, well, the windows were smaller, and there used to be roses growing along the wall here, and oh my God, it gave it such color. And my follower just laughed, and she's like, oh, like, how could you possibly know that? And the woman just turned to her, just turned toward her, and for the first time, her smile kind of just disappeared. And she just said, well, because I remember them, not like, oh, I read about them, or oh, I've seen it, I've studied them, oh, I went to, Flagler College, or I know. No, she said, I remember them. And the way that she said it sent chills down her spine. And the tour ended sometime around midnight like they normally do, and everyone began heading their separate ways. My follower turned to say goodbye to the woman, but she was already walking away alone through one of the narrow historic side streets. And something made her look back one final time, and the woman had stopped beneath a street lamp and standing completely still under it, just watching the old city go by, like someone returning home after centuries of being away. And then she stepped into the darkness between two of the buildings and vanished from sight. The creepy part? Maybe, but the next morning my follower couldn't stop thinking about this woman. Like, she was just so like, not like, she just couldn't explain it. She just was like, oh my God, like, who is she? So she went online trying to identify some of the details that the woman had mentioned. And according to historical records, the blue balconies, the roses, several of the oddly specific details that she had mentioned were actually very accurate. And details that weren't included on the tour, details that were kind of buried in like deep old historical archives. Like, you really would have had to look. So maybe she was a historian, maybe she had spent years studying St. Augustine, maybe she went to Flagler College right there, or maybe some people never really leave the oldest city in America, and every once in a while, they do come back to see how much has really changed. So tell me what you think, historian, or do we have something like the Michelsons arriving back in New Orleans after a couple of 100 years? Let me know what you think.
Growing up, do y'all remember that tale about the Devil's Tree? Because if you grew up in Jersey like I did, then I'm sure you went and explored that tree out of the book Weird New Jersey. As the tale goes, the tree is over 100 years old, and it's known as the Devil's Tree for multiple reasons. One reason is they claim in the wintertime that snow does not fall on the tree, it actually falls around the tree because it's supposedly so hot. And the other tale goes that the tree is considered evil. Anybody who tries to chop it down is considered to have a very bad luck life afterward. Fortunately, this story actually didn't happen to me. It actually happened to one of my friends, but yes, I was there when he tried to saw it down. After about 30 minutes, we were like, okay, dude, obviously you're not getting anywhere, so stop trying. We didn't experience anything spooky there, but when we left, things didn't go so well for him. Mind you, it's easy to get in your head after certain scenarios like this, especially when you believe in this kind of stuff, but I do find it very odd that the next day, he ended up getting very sick. And I mean, this kid had a fever for a solid 4 to 5 days after that. And oddly enough, the following week, he ended up getting into a really bad car accident where he completely totaled his car. Now, luckily, he was okay, but he totaled his car and he could have really gotten hurt. And this is when things started to get a little more serious. Like I said, the first part, he got sick immediately after, and then about a week later is when he totaled his car. And then it didn't happen back to back, but I would say about a month later was when he ended up falling and breaking his arm. I asked him how he broke his arm, and the story for that is even creepier. Mind you, he was an upcoming arborist, so apparently at work, when he was chopping down trees and putting them in the wood chipper, his sleeve ended up getting caught on one of the branches being pulled into the chipper, and he said he literally almost got dragged into the chipper. But fortunately, all that happened was he broke his arm because the chipper caused the branch to swing so hard that when it hit his arm, it completely snapped his forearm. Look, I do believe in bad omens and I do believe in bad luck, and I don't know about you guys, but that story and that tale actually terrifies me, and I haven't been back to that tree ever since that day. If you guys have any crazy experiences with Weird New Jersey or anything like that, put them down in the comments. I would love to read them, and follow for more crazy stories in my life.
I just came across this terrifying story having to do with a witch that I heard in Spanish, so I'm going to go ahead and translate it to you guys in English. I'll go ahead and tag the original creator right down here. The name of the story is The Witch from the Fifth Floor. So the story starts with a woman named Daniela. She had recently gotten divorced and moved to the city, to Mexico City, with her baby. She got an apartment out there. She says that not long after she moved into her apartment, somebody ended up moving in right across the hallway from her apartment. When she saw who it was, she said it was this beautiful young woman with beautiful skin and like blonde hair, and like something about this woman really drew Daniela in, and Daniela really wanted to be friends with her because she felt really alone being out in the city with a baby, that she thought what better thing to have is to have a friend that's right across the hallway from me. As time went on, they started to hang out, but Daniela noticed that her neighbor, let's call her Lily, she noticed that Lily wouldn't really pay much attention to Daniela. If anything, all of Lily's focus was on the baby, that she was constantly staring down the baby. It got to a point where Daniela kind of joked with Lily and said, it seems like the only reason you hang out with me is to like look at my baby, because you barely ever paying attention to me. Like Daniela would be telling her stories and Lily would just be like staring at the baby. Lily went up to the baby, started caressing the baby's face and her hair, and said it's because babies have this glow about them that really draws me to them. They're so pure. Something about that really like threw Daniela off. Like it was almost like her motherly instinct kicked in, and she didn't really like that. She started to want to like kind of keep her distance from Lily, but she noticed that every single time she would go outside, Lily just so happened to be coming outside as well. Like she was constantly running into her. One day, Daniela happened to go to the grocery store with her baby. She was out most of the day. When she got back, she finds Lily standing at her front door, like waiting for her. When Daniela approaches the door, she tells Lily, like what do you, like, how can I help you? Like, what do you want? And Lily goes, your baby was crying all day. And Daniela looks at her confused, like, what are you talking about? Like, my baby was with me. I took my baby to the store. And then Lily apparently just goes like, and then goes into her house and shuts the door. When Daniela makes it into her house, she tries to forget that encounter. She's putting away her groceries. She notices that her cat, she has a cat, is acting very erratic and on edge, like something is seriously going on. She tries to ignore it. A few more days goes by and her cat gets increasingly worse. Like he's becoming more and more like erratic, and he would hiss anytime like they would even open the front door or they would see Lily like in the front. A few more days goes by and Daniela ends up having to go back out into the city to go grocery shopping again with her baby. When she comes back, she finds this small glass bottle at the front of her door. She picks it up, looks at it, and sees that there are screws and dirt, and it has like a wax sort of thing in the top, like sealing the bottle. And she sees this like red substance. When she looks closer, she realizes that it's actually blood. When she sees this, she instinctively, without realizing it, drops the bottle because she's horrified. And when she drops it, this bottle breaks right at her front door. She gets inside, gets her baby inside, decides to get like a broom and a mop and like clean it up, and she goes back into the apartment and tries to once again forget that that happened. Later that night, after she goes to bed, she hears her cat crying, but like crying in agony. When she goes to check up on the cat unfortunately has passed away. When she looks at a closer look at her cat had like blood dripping like from his nose. She ends up having to bury the cat outside. They had like a little outdoor like patio area that she ends up having to bury her cat in. After that, Daniela is on high alert, but she still doesn't have any proof to say that this Lily had anything to do with anything. She just notices that every time she's outside, Lily just so happens to be out there. But it's getting to a point where like Lily was just very like, ¿cómo se dice en español, en inglés? Descaradamente. She was just like staring down her baby anytime they would be outside. Like it was very uncomfortable. Daniela still tries to kind of move on with her life, and she says a few more nights go by when one night she's getting ready to go to bed. She hears a knock at the door. She opens the door and it's Lily standing there. And before Daniela even has a chance to say like, what do you want? Like, why are you here? Lily just goes like this and blows something into her face. The moment she blows this powder into Daniela's face, Daniela completely falls to the ground and is paralyzed. Like she can't move, and she is starting to like kind of black out. She then sees when Lily walks into the house and walks straight towards the baby's room, and then she hears her baby screaming, like crying. But Daniela can't move. Like she's completely just unable to help her baby. But even though like she keeps hearing the baby screaming, to a point where the baby's screaming so hard that it's almost like the baby is choking, because whatever's going on back there, like it has to be terrifying. Daniela doesn't know how. She thinks maybe it was like her mother instinct, or like she doesn't know what, but she fought past this being like paralyzed thing and was able to get up and like force her way up and run towards her daughter's room to help. She makes it to her daughter's room. She sees Lily standing there holding her baby. So Daniela runs straight towards Lily to practically like attack her and get her baby back. Lily goes ahead and drops the baby, but thankfully like Daniela catches the baby and Lily just runs out of the apartment. After this, Daniela of course called the cops. The cops show up and Daniela's telling them like, her name's Lily. She lives right across the hallway from me. She tells them everything that happened. They go into the apartment across the hallway. When they open the door, there is nothing in there. There's no furniture. There's literally nothing. All they find are small little glass bottles and candles and like symbols and ritualistic sort of like powders, but there's no sign that Lily ever lived there. And another thing that they found in Lily's apartment that was extremely disturbing was baby clothes. She had a bunch of baby clothes there just like waiting. They were never able to track Lily down. She completely disappeared. As it turns out, that apartment had been empty, and when Lily saw Daniela outside with her baby, Lily just kind of like broke into the apartment and pretended to live there, but that apartment was never rented out to anyone. To this day, Daniela has no clue what ended up happening with Lily, but she believes that Lily was in fact obviously a witch and that she probably never looked as beautiful as she saw her. Like she probably had never had like the perfect skin and like the perfect hair or whatnot. Daniela believes that this witch would go around stealing the youth of babies, which is why she was so obsessed with her daughter. Crazy.
A series of spooky stories except for its women's intuition. When I was 19, I had just gotten my nose pierced and my sister and I were boxing. I told her not to hit me in the face and she hit me square in the nose. Siblings really just be doing you dirty. Through the pain, my brain just screamed, I'm pregnant, even though I was told becoming pregnant would put my life at risk, so I was being very careful. I stopped abruptly. I found out later that I was in fact pregnant and was only 2 to 3 days past conception at that point. The night before my dad's suicide, I could not sleep, not even a wink. I was at a hotel with my daughter for one of her volleyball tournaments. I texted him at 6 a.m. seeing if he was up. He was completely normal, and we continued to chat on and off about my daughter's games, stats, etc. Midway through the last game, I almost fainted. I started having heart palpitations and chest pain. I ended up having to call an ambulance from the highway on the way back home in a full-on blizzard. They continued to see the irregular heart rate, but my blood work was fine, and they discharged me. I didn't communicate with him about this at all. He had a lot going on and I didn't want to worry him. His last message was, did you make it home okay? I didn't have the energy after all the wildness of driving through a snowstorm to the nearest hotel for my daughter and I, finding a safe place to sleep for the night. In the morning, I sent him a flurry of texts explaining what happened, that I was fine and now headed back home, a 4-ish hour drive. I sent the text and hit the road. About 15 minutes from our house, I got a call from my sister, but I sent it to voicemail as my daughter was in the call and I just knew that he'd gone through with it. I quickly checked my phone and all my messages were left unread. I called my sister back on my cell phone, not the speaker, and she was sobbing. All I said was, I know, I have to get daughter's name home and I'll call you back. She was so confused. She asked me how I knew, almost as if he had told me beforehand, and I just repeated, no, I just knew as soon as you called. I can only describe it as someone taking an axe to our soul ties. My body just knew. That is so sad. Not me, but my mom. Right after high school, she was supposed to go to a lake house with a friend of hers, her friend's boyfriend and some of his friends. The day of, she says she got this gut-wrenching feeling that she shouldn't go, so she didn't. A couple days later, she found out the night that they were there, her friend's boyfriend brought a pew-pew and started playing Russian roulette. He spun the barrel, pointed it at his girlfriend, and killed her instantly while she was listening to music with the headphones on. What the fuck? Her friend had no idea that it was coming. It could have very well been her that night, and she's never ignored her gut feeling since then. That is fucking insane. Why would you do that in general? Why would you want to play that game in general? But to do that to your... I accurately predicted the dates all 3 of my kids would be born. The first I knew would be the only date that year that ran in ascending numerical order, example 234. The second I knew would be born on a very well-known memorable date, example 4th of July. And the third, which was the only one where I actually told people about my prediction, was just a random date that happened to be the birthday of someone in my extended family. First kid was 16 days overdue, second was 3 days overdue, and third was 3 weeks early, so no pattern in pregnancy length to go on. It was just sheer intuition from about 12 weeks pregnant what their birthday would be. These are not the actual dates, just examples. I also knew that my second would be a very short labor, it was about 45 minutes, and my third would be long and complicated. A car crash sent me into labor, which ended in an emergency C-section 4 days later. Said it before and I'll say it again, women's intuition is one thing, but a mother's intuition is crazy. Come back for more.
All right, y'all. Story time. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a recovering addict, and this has nothing to do with the story time. But I had too many strokes about 5 years ago, and it messed my memory up really, really bad. Like more than I thought that it did. Um, you know, I'm starting to realize. Well, I realized a couple years ago, but anyways, nonetheless. So my dad passed away about a week ago. And so I'm sitting here doing my nails and I'm thinking about him because, I'm trying to remember the happy things and not focus on the negative too much. And I actually believe like I can feel him almost helping me do that, if that makes any sense. So when I was born and raised in Florida, but when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my dad got a really good job for a construction company, and he was a foreman on a multi-million-dollar job for a construction company in Connecticut. So I lived in Connecticut from what was it, kindergarten to the end of 5th grade, and then we came back to Florida. Well, for those who don't know about Connecticut, it is very haunted. Very haunted. If you know, you know. And so we lived in this newly built townhome. But when you look at this townhome, it almost looks like a mansion, but it's two houses in one. Of course, that's what a townhome is. Anyways, I had a basement that was like my playroom. My brother set me up or built me an actual like stereo system. It had like the 4 foot speakers. I had four of those. The six CD disc changer, the amp, all of that. So my brother was 10 years older than me. He helped me deck out the basement, put carpet in it, like put this radio down there and all my stuff, right? And I used to dance. Like I wanted to be a dancer as a little girl so bad. I would dance and dance and dance and dance for hours. I'd like to dance and play imaginary rather than play with toys. That's how I've always been, or be outside. And so I would have this imaginary friend that I didn't really see physically, but I just kind of pretended that he was there. And so one day, my real friend Megan was over at the house, and we were actually in my room. And in my closet, sometimes in houses up there or bigger houses, you can go into a closet and then there'll be another door and it'll go to like almost like an attic off the side, and it's got like a slant to it. So like a grown person can't really stand up, but like someone who's 6 or 7 can. So I had all of my toys in there. And Meg and I were at the very far end of like this I want to say like 8 foot long closet that we had renovated into like a playroom. And we're sitting there, we're playing, da 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 da, and all of a sudden, on the very opposite end of this attic slash playroom, I had a little piano that lit up, and it did not have batteries in it. I don't even remember ever really playing with it, but all of a sudden, it strategically starts going like up and down. And when you press the keys, it lights up. And they were lighting up. Megan and I looked at each other. We shit a brick and fucking ran. That's what happened. We were so scared. So I'm screaming. My brother's home. He takes the piano, he smashes it, we get rid of it. Okay, what's done is done. Okay, so the next year, the prior year, I actually had gotten a Furby for Christmas. Like very, very, Furbies were bad. They should have not been made. But anyways, so I didn't like it from the jump. I never really played with it. I didn't get it. I didn't get the hype. And plus, like I said, I didn't really play with toys. Like, I would play like video games like Spyro and like listen to music and play with my imaginary friend. Anyways, I'm dead asleep one night and all of a sudden I hear these noises, okay? And I like brush it off at first and then it gets louder and it's almost like a walkie-talkie noise, or like those things whenever people are trying to talk to ghosts, like that staticky noise, right? So that's what I keep hearing. And so I get freaked out. But as a little girl, like you freeze. So I start screaming. My brother rushes in, my dad rushes in. We're looking for this noise because they can hear it too. Find out this Furby had been sitting under my bed for over a year now. No batteries in it. And it was making those types of noises. So first the piano, then the Furby. Okay? Now, when you're a little kid, you don't really think about these things in depth too much because it's kind of just like your frontal lobe cortex isn't developed and you have no crystallized intelligence, so it is what it is. I brush it off. Well, a few weeks after that incident with the Furby, I'm downstairs and I remember the song I was dancing to as well. It was Nelly Furtado, I'm Like a Bird. I loved that song when I was a little girl. I would spin and dance and spin and dance. And yeah, I was a freaking ballerina in my own head. But so the stereo that my brother had built me was down there, but it was in the basement, so it would echo really loud. So my dad had it set to where I could only turn it up to so high. Well, all of a sudden, the volume goes from, you know, enough for a 7-year-old to full fucking blast. And when I say full blast, I mean the whole entire neighborhood could hear it. That's how loud that thing got. And so before, like, I can hear, I couldn't hear anything, but my dad opens the top door as I'm trying to run up because I'm scared. As soon as I get halfway up the stairs and he's asking me what's going on, the radio just shuts off. Power just shuts off. Still plugged in, still worked afterwards. Normal. Just shut off. So I think it's safe to say that children do have abilities, especially before their brain is fully developed. They can see things we can. They can witness things we can't. And I haven't had too many paranormal experience since then. I think maybe one. But all I'm trying to say is if you're from Connecticut, you know it's haunted. That's my paranormal story for you. And it's just kind of funny because I'm sitting here thinking about my dad, and like I said, like when you start, your mind starts just rolling into memories, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of crazy that, my parents kind of witnessed all this too, because I had no reason to lie about it. I was a really good kid. And why they didn't move us out of that house. I mean, I don't know. But I think, honestly, that maybe I manifested a friend and it was a ghost. And it was just a kid trying to play with me. Honestly, that's what my intuition tells me. And that it was never just a made up imaginary friend. That maybe it was just something I couldn't see, but I knew was there. So that's, ladies, why I say to always trust your intuition, and don't go to Connecticut if you don't want to see ghosts or witness paranormal things, because I'm telling you, it's probably one of the most haunted states in the United States. Yeah, but yeah, that was my story time.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
My mother's side of the family is native to Mexico. Nearly all of them, including my grandmother, had never left. Growing up, my grandfather told me some stories of his ex-wife. She was referred to as La Bruja Loca and was said to dance with the devil at midnight. I thought he told these stories as a joke or as a way to cope with heartbreak. Though over the years, I realized my mother was never around for those stories. My mother and her father were very close. We were only ever at his house when he told us about La Bruja Loca, while my mother was always in another room or offered to run errands for my grandfather. Was she upset that my grandfather spoke of her mother in such a way? Come to find out, she agreed with everything my grandfather had to say. My mother was afraid of La Bruja Loca. As a child, my mother saw, heard, and felt things. Very scary things. My grandmother was a very selfish woman in her youth, and as far as I know, she still is. She stole from her church, from her friends, from other people's land, and it was never enough to satisfy her. One day, I'm not sure when, my grandmother began to mess with things. Very, very dark things. She opened doors she couldn't shut, made deals she shouldn't have, and made sacrifices she couldn't take back. My grandmother never lost a gamble. Every party she attended, every club she entered, there was always a new man looking to pursue her, blown away by her beauty. For years, her face, her body never seemed to age, but it was clear her heart had. She was bitter, a cold, cruel woman toward my mother and her siblings. My mother had told my great-grandmother that she could see a little monkey on her mother's back. A small black monkey that had no movements, had no features, and just hung on the back of her mother's shirt. Eso es un demonio, my great-grandmother would say. My mother was told to not look at it, not to speak of it, and it would go away. My mother forgot about the little monkey and carried on with her days.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of my friend who used to pee her bed. And she used to pee her bed, and somebody was using the pee in the spiritual realm until that person that was bewitching her finally got her pee in the physical realm. And I'll explain why. So I was telling my friend that I had a problem of peeing on my bed, and I was 12 at this time. I had a really serious problem. I don't know what was going on. And so she told me, she was like, you need to get that checked out and also don't trust family members that tell you that you need to go to the dad's side or the mom's family side to get it fixed, because they will mess you up just like me. So the girl was like 14, right? Fine. So I'm asking her, like, what do you mean? She's like, she also used to have a problem. Like, she used to pee on her bed. She's like, every single time she was like, it was time for her to wake up, she would stream of herself in the toilet and she would pee on the bed, and it was at a specific time every single time. So eventually she's like, her grandmother from her dad's side told her mom that, listen, I went to go see a person and that person told me that your daughter has a problem of peeing on herself. The traditional healer told me that your child needs to come this side so that we can do a ceremony for her. Obviously, she's like, her mom did not believe, and her mom went to her own person to find out if that was true or not. And the person told her exactly what the grandmother said. And they were like, okay, fine, let the ceremony begin. So my friend is like, on the day of the ceremony, it was weird because there was 2 black chickens and a black goat. And, you know, in spirituality, black does not mean good, right? Black candles, you know, it's not good. And they use that. The grandmother told her to pee inside a bucket and then they're going to fix it. And my friend is like, she did everything that they had told her or whatever. And then it was 4 a.m., right? Before the sun came out, she's like, her grandmother woke her up and told her to bath with this thing whereby the water, I think, was mixed with her urine, and it had like needles and all of that. Like, you can already tell this is a witchcraft scam. Come on. She's like, she bathed with that water or whatever, and ever since that day she started having strange dreams. She stopped peeing on her bed, but she started having strange dreams. She's like, there was a time where she found herself peeing in the dream, right? And then she took the pee and she washed this other old man from her grandmother's father's from her grandmother from her father's side's village. She bathed the man with her pee, and then she's like, after that she woke up, and like a couple of days later they found out that the man had passed away. She's like, obviously she didn't really take any notice until, man, things started happening. And one day she dreamt of herself at this particular yard that she doesn't know, and in that yard they had caught her, but they caught her in the dream. And she's like, ever since that day, then she started like having trouble peeing, whatever. She used to pee blood, she used to go to the doctor, and the doctor would not see anything. When she eventually went to St. John's and the people there helped her, there was a prophet that told her, listen, your grandmother played you. Your grandmother's the one that put a curse on you to pee on your bed. And then she realized that she can use your pee actually to bewitch people, and that's what she's been doing. And she's like, those people, when you dreamt of yourself getting caught, you were actually getting caught in the spiritual realm. And those people basically, whatever your grandmother was trying to throw at them using you, they threw it back to you because your grandmother is using you. And so, you know, it's very unfortunate that she's using you, but you know, she just picked you out of a hat and she was like, this one, I'm going to use this one. And your mom fell for the bait. Now, the reason why they went to a traditional healer, and the traditional healer told them exactly what the grandmother had said, is because the grandmother is a very powerful witch. Like, she is high in the rankings of witchcraft, so she's able to basically blind a sangoma. You go to a traditional healer and she's able to blind that sangoma. Number one, either that sangoma will not see anything, or that sangoma will say exactly what she wants that sangoma to say. So even if you go to somebody for protection, it will not work. So they were like, she can't get into that church because they pray a lot over there, and you know, churches it's very hard to get into a church, you know, through witchcraft. So she was told that she needs to stay there, I think for like a couple of days while they work on her. And they did the things, and she stopped peeing, she stopped having the dreams, and she stopped having the pains and all of that. And she's like, till that day, she doesn't speak to her grandmother, she doesn't visit her grandmother because she doesn't trust her grandmother. Her other siblings go, but she's like, if I go there and she finds me lacking, it's over for me. And I started getting scared, and I was like, what if I'm also getting used like that? Because guys, at 12 years old, I'm still wetting my bed. And that didn't stop until I was 15, y'all.